Heretic is a fascinating and unique psychological suspense horror flick with an incredibly unique premise, but philosophical underpinnings that feel both of our time and 10 years outdated. I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. The IMDb synopsis for Heretic reads, "Two young religious women are drawn into a game of cat and mouse in the house of a strange man." Okay, we need a little bit more than that. These are two female Mormon missionaries. They are welcomed into the home of an older man who, in conversation at first only, puts their faith and reasoning for their beliefs to the test, and ultimately does that in a way in which their lives are at stake. I would describe this as being more suspense than horror, but it eventually gets to some grotesque horror beats. It's really built on this gradual revelation that their host is more sinister than he appears. The second half has more sort of traditional psycho dungeon trappings, but is still based on these women wrestling with ideas that Mr. Reed, played by Hugh Grant, is presenting to them, and they are trying to reason with him or out-reason him in an effort to stay alive and get free. There is some complexity in the characters of the two girls who have different attachments to their faith. One is born and bred Mormon, absolutely 100%, The other has had a rougher life and more questions and doubts regarding her faith. And so it's interesting to kind of see how each of them react to the situations that they are dealt. As far as the performances, I thought they were really strong, and that's valuable to me in a horror movie. Hugh Grant's smiling charm is wonderfully bent to the sinister and creepy. I thought that would be the case based on what I saw in the trailers, and he definitely executed on that in a way I found very satisfying. The two actresses playing the missionaries, not familiar to me, but they have some great emotional access. They have some subtleties in their expressions of fear, because they're also trying to keep it under wraps and be cordial, because they're there trying to persuade him to accept the Mormon faith. And so, they don't want to give away too much that they're really freaked out increasingly, And so those kinds of complexities in the performances, they're of the strength that I need to really invest in and care about horror characters. So I was really happy with the performances. As far as the stunts and visuals, it's all practical, I think. They're not going for any crazy CG stuff. It's all about the environments and the makeup, and the kind of psycho dungeon scenes were kept appropriately dark in terms of lighting, making me lean forward at times to try and discern what I'm seeing. So very well done. I appreciated their willingness to not make everything super well lit. Okay, so let's talk about the themes. That is the primary reason I was interested in watching this, because I could tell they were going to be dealing with issues of faith, of belief, why we believe in different things that we believe, specifically various religious beliefs. And what was interesting to me was trying to follow which character was the quote-unquote voice of truth in a given moment. I think that bad writing makes it all too obvious that one character in particular is always the one that's going to be saying truth that we are supposed to be persuaded by or already agree with. And I appreciate it when that mouthpiece of truth is swapped between characters. And so that was definitely going on in this movie. Many times, Mr. Reed, I think, seems to represent the writers and the thinking that we are supposed to agree with, even though he's the villain. I think we're supposed to see these Mormon missionaries as having overly simplistic or unsolid reasons for believing the things that they do. There's a lot of criticism of Mormonism early on in the movie, but it really broadens out and becomes criticism of religion in general. But I think certainly at the beginning, we are meant to kind of side with Mr. Reed and think in asking, why do these girls believe what they believe? But at the same point, the deeper we get into the movie, the missionary girls get their moments, I think, as the mouthpiece of truth. I don't think as often, but they do have their moments. If I'm correctly identifying the statements I'm supposed to agree with in Heretic and the statements I'm supposed to disagree with because, for example, they are clumsily stated or they're associated directly with evil actions, those are some of kind of the clues that we can go off of here. So if I'm reading everything right, I think the philosophical underpinnings of this movie are heavily influenced by what was called the Four Horsemen of the New Atheism. So these are Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett, Christopher Hitchens, and Sam Harris, thinkers in different fields that spoke loudly and fiercely against religion in the wake of 9/11 and in the years since then. Although of the two still living, Dawkins and Harris, because Hitchens and Dennett have both passed away, Dawkins, and I believe also Harris, but I'm not as sure about Harris, have admitted that at least culturally speaking, Christianity has value and should not be utterly discarded or have its influence snuffed out. That's kind of a more recent kind of development that's been showing up in those tracking those guys. The influence of this sort of pop new atheism, I think, shows up in the arguments in Heretic against quote-unquote religion. Mormonism gets more focus, but it's sort of a straw man stand-in for all of religion. Of the religions that are mentioned, I think Mormonism is the easiest one to criticize and to point to elements that are demonstrably false. And yet, it kind of is the stand-in for what is ultimately a criticism supposed to be directed at all religion. All religion is grouped together in these broad statements claiming that no religion holds up under examination. And this was very much the case with many of the arguments coming from the Four Horsemen. Yes, they would single in on Christianity here and there, but they would make these overly broad statements. And then when they're talking to a Christian, it's like, well, okay, the Christian is if they're handling that debate or discussion responsibly, are going to say, listen, I'm not here to defend Islam. I'm here to just speak for what I see in Christianity, you know. But so there was just kind of like, it was just easier to kind of make these broad statements about religion in general. And I think that's kind of like, that's just kind of a weak place to argue from. But anyway, I mean, if you're examining and actually trying to discern, okay, what is the truth here, then it just gets too messy to really kind of get to what the truth of the matter is. But the statement that none of these religions hold up under examination is made in the movie, but the representation of this so-called examination or criticism takes the form of significantly shotgun tactics used at the height of New Atheism, where like a shotgun blast with there's all these little buckshot, all these little pellets that are all hitting all at once. So the idea of the shotgun tactic is for numerous weak, I think, yet sharply and charismatically worded arguments. That's what gives them their force. They're sharply worded, they're charismatically delivered. But ultimately, the points themselves are weak, but they're delivered in this explosion of criticisms, all in a single breath, at the point of the debate or the discussion where the critic is losing patience, or they're running out of time in the debate, or honestly, maybe they're feeling cornered and realize, oh, I'm kind of losing this debate. All of that shotgun blast is in an effort, whether they're aware of it or not, to seemingly overwhelm their debate opponent or conversation partner. But this overwhelming shotgun blast is only effective because there's not time given to follow through responsibly on each of the points made. Harris used this tactic with William Lane Craig. I've had this tactic used on me. Those who are discerning can see how it works and they can see the emptiness behind it, but sadly many give weight to shotgun blast points that the points don't deserve just because of the way that they're delivered. In that sense, I was a little frustrated with Hugh Grant's character, even though there was one response to a blast of his that was allowed in the script or given in the script. It made a couple good points, but still I could tell that the writing was like, okay, they're familiar with these bad arguments from New Atheism, not as familiar with responses to those arguments, because often those arguments were presented in a way where a response was not possible, you know. Anyway, Heretic seems to finally philosophically land in a similar place as several outspoken and popular atheists today, who would maybe say that religion, quote unquote, just broad umbrella here, is demonstrably false, I guess, without as is in the case of Heretic, without addressing the stunning and most important historical evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. And you can see Dr. Gary Habermas for more on that. That is an awesome rabbit hole to go down. But anyway, yeah, this idea that all religion is demonstrably false, religion is all about controlling us and is morally wrong for having that agenda. And yet, religion makes us feel good, it helps us to behave well, and it helps some have hope for life after death, and maybe some peace and contentment in their life now. And so, for those reasons only, it should be held on to in our lives. And I think this is actually very revealing of the dilemma that many feel. Many want hope for life after death. They want to feel at peace and have wisdom for navigating life, but they don't want to submit to the direction of the one who offers eternal life, peace, contentment, wisdom. We naturally, and I'm including us Christians in this, want all the blessings that God offers, but we want them all on our terms. That's just our natural tendency. But if we make our autonomy our highest value, although we can experience some of God's blessings that we happen to be agreeable to, we will also retain patterns that are destructive to us and to those around us. I don't believe that the Bible teaches that eternal life specifically hangs on our willingness and capacity to submit to Jesus. But to the degree we are unwilling to give up control to Jesus, we will miss out on blessings God intends us to have in this life, and we will increase the amount of suffering and darkness in our lives. Now, I have no idea what your tastes are in movies, but if I were a time traveler, I would go back in time and say, Peter, watch it, but wait for a streaming service. It's solid as a horror movie for your taste, but mostly interesting for its subject matter. Under the right circumstances, with the right people, this could be a springboard for great conversation for sure, but it mostly reminded me how important it is to talk about issues of faith in good faith, where both parties are committed to an ongoing dialogue rather than simply trying to win a debate and then escape from any further conversation that might hold them accountable for the ideas expressed. Anyway, this one is rated R for some bloody violence, and those are all of my thoughts for now on Heretic. Right now, I'd like to take some time to write a tune for pre-made rhyme. The lyrics kind of never change, but the melody gets rearranged. I never know what I'll create to say how much I appreciate Dan Axel, Gabriel Stinson, Olin D. Branham, Winston Crutchfield, Lee Bray, Joel Nelson, Jake Berry, and Michael Cottrell. Thank you for supporting me and SBP and CGC. And now to all who hear this tune, thank you as well. Please come back soon. Want to hear your name in song? Then check out our page on Patreon. All right, I would love to get your thoughts and reactions as always in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, click that bell to stay connected. I want to thank the Spirit Blade Insiders for making this review possible. You can get info about the benefits of joining at patreon.com/Spirit Productions. Then I hope you'll check out our podcast and stay connected to all CGC content over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. For more chat about geek entertainment, answers to your questions, and news from the wider world of Christian geekery, get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services.